Oh yeah, are you recording yet? Go ahead and press the...
Okay.
You gotta take that off later.
Okay.
Oh no, I'm going to do the entire review like this. You're like my parrot. He's a good parrot.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's my eye patch.
So
I think this movie should be rated R.
Okay. Well, the Batman is finally upon us. My most anticipated movie of 2022. I have been waiting for this for a while, and it's here. But to prepare for it, we're going to review Christopher Nolan's epic Dark Knight Trilogy, starting with Batman Begins. So Batman Begins is basically the origin of Batman, how Bruce Wayne was orphaned as a child and then trained to be this vigilante to save his city from corruption.
So you could almost say it was where Batman begins.
So what are your general thoughts on that movie?
I thought it was a good origin film, a good origin story, I should say. It was pretty entertaining. Maybe I think they sort of hit their stride in future movies, but I think it was a very good introduction to the series with really only a few weak points.
Mm-hmm. I mostly agree with what you said. I think it's a well-made movie that does have some flaws. On the positive, though, I think the acting is pretty strong here, especially from Michael Caine and Christian Bale. I like how their characters interact with each other, and it delivers some of the most emotionally resonant scenes in the entire film, especially this one scene in an elevator shaft.
Why do we fall? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
Still haven't given up on me.
Never.
At the time, it was one of the most emotional of the Batman films.
Well, I think certainly there was more emotional realism, I think. So I'm going to guess that you wouldn't mind if for the rest of this review, if I started doing my entire review like this the whole time. You'll be all right with that, right?
I guess so.
Well, maybe not. That might be hard to sustain. It might make my voice hoarse later.
Then
Then people will accuse me of being mean to the crew. So
I like the scenes where he's training with Liam Neeson. I thought that was very interesting. Liam Neeson also is really good in this movie. He was also...
I'm coming for you. Oh, wait, no. I'm sorry. Those are his other movies.
I really liked him as a villain, too. He didn't feel like a cartoon. Like, you could actually see where he was coming from. And I'll get more into that later with kind of the issues.
I had an issue with his
I thought
name.
that was...
Ra's al Ghul. I mean, sounds more like a dish from Hungary or something like that.
I can see that. And also the scene with the bat tumbler where he's getting chased by the police, I thought that was very entertaining. Some of my issues, unfortunately, the fist fights I thought were edited a bit poorly.
In what way?
It has like you look at a movie like Taken 2 that's like really choppy with like all the editing, or even Taken 3. That's kind of like what Batman Begins felt like when Batman was fighting with criminals. And it makes sense for one scene where Falcone is looking at his men getting attacked by Batman. And you kind of get like a sense of like chaos. But then there's other scenes in the movie that are just like that. And it doesn't really flow.
So choppy editing, you would say?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Interesting that you pointed out the one where the choppiness would be motivated because of the disorientation of the bad guys in that scene.
Yeah. Also, I feel that the plot about this drug lord Falcone and kind of him paying off the police and everything that's going on in Gotham that Batman has to stop, I feel that that's a bit of a pedestrian plot, kind of basic level stuff to set up Batman. And I feel that as the film moves into the second act, it loses some of the emotion of the first act, because the guy that killed his parents, he gets shot in the first act. And even though you could say that there is still emotion because he's after Falcone, because Falcone caused this guy to go out and kill his parents, it's just not a direct line.
I think that may have been intentional, and you could. I mean, I can certainly understand why you would see that as maybe reducing its effectiveness as a plot. But I think what they were trying to do was sort of tip the hat to the original Batman trilogy with Michael Keaton that kicked it off, sort of saying, "Hey, we're starting in that direction, but not going in that direction." Sort of changing a veer, because the entire thing was the origin story was that Jack Napier orphaned Batman when he was a kid, and then and he turned out to be the ultimate villain of the movie. They decided to sort of pay homage to that without necessarily going in the same direction. Like, it was a kind of a misdirect for those who expected a rehash.
I can see why they would do that, but now that we have the benefit of seeing where these films went, it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit like a miscue in that respect. I could see that.
Yeah,
you were talking about the pedestrian nature of the drug lords and the city crime. I think that was kind of a direct reference to, because a lot of times that's what he was fighting in the comics.
Yeah,
and so I really think that was just like acknowledging the comic book origin. I think they could have perhaps done something to make it feel more dramatic, maybe give a little more emotional investment like they did with so many of the other characters in that particular series of fights. But you're right, it actually did make the second act feel a little flat. So.
Yeah, and I feel that kind of this type of plot, I think that would be better if it had better villains in it. And that leads me into my final issue with this movie, is that it kind of has a problem with the villains. Like, the first act is Falcone, and then he kind of gets written off at the beginning of the second act. The second act is Scarecrow. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning of the third, it's revealed that Ra's al Ghul is actually Liam Neeson, and he's come to Gotham to destroy it. Mm-hmm. Ra's al Ghul is the best villain of the movie, and I feel like he should have been the main villain. You could have kept Falcone, but maybe delete Scarecrow. Also, adding on to Scarecrow, I feel like they didn't really utilize him the way they should have.
Cillian Murphy can be brilliant, and he was definitely underutilized. So,
okay,
yeah.
I mean, mostly in like these hallucinations people were having. Except for two, I found all of them to be unimaginative and unrevealing. And I mean unrevealing because when you have a character that can exploit characters' fears, there's a lot you can do with that.
Yeah.
There's a lot you can say about the characters on a visual level.
Yep. But
when Rachel gets gassed, she sees lice. Falcone just sees Scarecrow. The two that worked for me was when Batman gets gassed. Mm-hmm. All the bats are flying around. There's a shot where one of the bats is coming out of Scarecrow's mouth. That was interesting. And also this one scene where the civilians, after being gassed, they look up and they see Batman gliding across rooftops. And all they see is this shadowy figure with red eyes and a gaping mouth. And I didn't think about that years ago when I watched the film for the first time. But now that I'm kind of older and I can get into metaphors and kind of get below the surface inside of a film, I kind of see that as foreshadowing for that conversation Batman and the Joker have in the interrogation room. Or Joker's telling him that he's just a freak like him. And I feel like that scene captures how some people view Batman. Kind of this person out there that they're not sure that they can trust.
Yeah, he definitely, honestly, far more than Spider-Man ever did or would, is a character whose motivations are sometimes in question, and the methods that he takes are sometimes quite extreme. And I mean, that's why he's referred to as the Dark Knight, because he doesn't do everything in the light. And there are folks who would argue that he is nothing but a street vigilante that's a well-funded street vigilante that's really basically the villain of the movies, and just there's really no true hero in the Batman movies. It's just one villain fighting another. Some people do feel that way about it. I personally don't, but I think that you could certainly make a good argument for that because of that reason.
But yeah, overall, I thought Batman Begins was a good starting point. They weren't really there yet, but they had the pieces. I'm going to give Batman Begins a B.
B for Batman Begins. I like it.